What's up everyone? Today I'm going to teach you how I paint white weathered armor. For this model I'm going to be using a slightly kit-bashed Deathguard, but this should work on pretty much any armor. What you want to do is you want to start off with a white primer. Now this is straight out of a rattle can. Make sure you apply it thin. You don't want to gum up any of that detail. Then for the demonic mount, the horse, you're going to black it out with Vallejo model color black. I like this black because it covers really well. You can obviously use whatever black you want, but I highly recommend this Vallejo. It's very easy to work with. Now, if you get black onto the white areas, don't fret too much. You can always go back and clean it up with a white, or you can leave it for the weathering, which we're going to be doing later. Now, he does have a little bit of flesh showing around his neck. I'm going to use Citadel contrast paints. 2 parts Gilliman flesh, 1 part Mantis Warriors green. I am going for a bit of a Nurgle look here, so I want his skin to look a little diseased, hence the green. If you have messy brushwork like I do, you can either go back and cover it with white, or you can leave it for when we get to weathering. For the inside of the mouth here, we're going to use Vallejo Hull Red. It's kind of a browny red. It's a great base coat for pretty much any skin tone, but we're going to use it for the inside of the mouth. Make sure you get the roof, make sure you get the tongue, and if you know, again, the theme here is if you have messy brushwork, don't worry about it. Just go back and fix it. Now, he does have a little bit of cloth here. We're going to use Vallejo Green Brown. This is mainly going to be focused under his torso and on his sleeves. He has some sleeves showing that isn't completely armored. Don't forget about his leather here. That's also going to be Vallejo Green Brown. This is a non-airbrush tutorial, as you may have noticed. I'm trying to keep it simple because these models, these Deathguard models, are just so complicated that I feel like you kind of have to find a simplified version or you'll go crazy. For the demonic mount, we're now going to grab Vallejo Dark Rust and just dry brush the horse. This is going to give you some nice highlights. We are going to go up an additional level after this, so if you're not seeing a ton of a difference between the black and the dark rust, don't worry. And the reason I chose the dark rust is for 2 reasons. It works well as a highlight for the black, but we're also going to use that dark rust for the weathering. But before I get onto that, you're going to do a second highlight with MSP Harvest Brown. This is kind of an orangey brown. Just do a lighter dry brush of that over the previous layer of dark rust. But back to the dark rust. The reason we're using that is that it's going to be the same color we're going to be using for weathering. So if you get a little messy, again, you don't really even have to worry about it if you get it on the white because we're going to be doing some weathering later on. I'm trying to make a tutorial where it's you can afford to be sloppy is kind of what I wanted to get across with this. Obviously, painting neat and clean is always better, but if you're painting a whole army of Deathguard, man, I pity you. Vallejo Golden Olive. This is what we're going to paint the trim as. I am going for kind of a Nurgle-y look here, so white and green, heavily weathered, feels like Heresy era Deathguard. Well, I know it's a different game system, but it's kind of similar in scheme, so it felt appropriate. This one, you probably want to be a little bit more careful than the previous layers. Again, though, if you get green on the white, don't worry about it. You can either paint it or you can leave it for the weathering. For the hooves here, I'm going to grab Scale 75 Petroleum Gray and just you're basically going to layer up over all the black, leaving the Vallejo model color black in the recesses and shadows. I did paint a black stripe on his helmet. You don't have to do this, but if you wanted to, I figured I'd show you how I did it. You paint a black stripe and then you grab Vallejo white and you just slowly, with a very small brush, chip away at the lines of the black to make it look like it's scratched up. And you know, this technique will work for any colors, obviously, but I just wanted to show how you would go about painting that. What's great about this is you actually don't have to make the black line perfectly straight either, because you can use the white to kind of hide your sins here. While we're showing this off, I'd like to remind you, if you haven't liked the video and you do like these videos, we'd appreciate that support. We also stream multiple times a week, so check out the stream schedule on the channel. All right, now we're gonna get to the actual weathering. So we're gonna go back to that dark rust, as I mentioned, and you're gonna grab a sponge. You're gonna grab that sponge, dab it off on a paper towel, and just focus on the edges of the green and white armor. Now think about what are the most prominent areas, what is most likely to get rubbed up against something or hit. That's where you want to focus. So again, edges are probably the safest bet. You're going to want to get some of this dark rust on the flat panels too, but it shouldn't be in the same proportion as the edges here. What we're going to end up doing with this dark rust after is you're going to end up connecting some of these random patterns that you get from the dark rust. Now, optionally, if you wanted to go a level higher, what you could do is you could put down these, random dots of dark rust, and then below them or surround them with a white paint, a lighter paint. That's a little bit harder with white paint, but let's say you're doing a yellow paint, you could do a lighter yellow around the dark rust area. As I mentioned, we're going to connect up those dark rust dots. You can also do a bit of freehand like I am here. It's nice to add these little scratches. But what I mean is, when I say we connect up those dots, is those random dots that you get from the sponge, you want to connect them, especially on hard edges, if you want that heavily weathered look. It's not like edge highlighting where you have to be very neat. You can be messy with this. You don't have to edge highlight the entire hard edge. If you want to, you can. What I like to do is I like to dot around the edges here. You can see the method here. I'm kind of scratching the edge. I'm not doing a nice fine line or anything. Another area of focus is going to be the lower areas. Think about where dust would be getting kicked up, rocks getting kicked up by the hooves there. And once you're done with that, you should have something like this. Of course, you can go lighter, you can go heavier. This is about where I want to go for the chips. We are going to continue weathering. It's not done yet. You should always go lighter with weathering. It's very easy to accidentally overdo it. So I'd start light, always have a sanity check every couple of minutes, take a step back, look at the model, and see if you're happy with it. We're gonna go back to that MSP Harvest Brown. That was the color we did the second layer dry brush on the horse with. We are going to scratchy edge highlight the leather here. Kind of a similar method to the weathering that we did with weathering the edges of the armor. Scratchy highlights, dotted highlights along the edge are kind of the way to go. You don't want a perfectly clean line. The scratchy highlight, gives the appearance that maybe this leather's cracked or scratched. These Chaos Cavalry are probably not maintaining their gear to the best of their ability. He does have a bit of leather wrapped around his weapon. Make sure you go there as well. And then within that Harvest Brown, choose a couple of areas that, again, what would have the heaviest weathering, the heaviest wear? The edges, right? The corners. You're gonna add a little bit of Iraqi sand. It's just a little bit of a lighter color to show like maybe another layer has been exposed. Keeping with the Iraqi sand, you're going to paint all the bone. He has some horns on his head that need some scratches. He also has horns everywhere on the horse. And while you're at it, you might as well grab that Iraqi sand and do some scratches on the leather around the neck of the demonic mount. Then with Vallejo Bone White, I did the teeth in Iraqi sand as well. I guess I consider that kind of a bone. Grab Vallejo Bone White and just do a little bit of layering here / edge highlighting. We're not doing anything super fancy here. This is not a competition level painting, obviously. This is Army Painter. We're trying to get this done fast and relatively easy. Then you're going to grab a dry brush and hit all the horns with this Vallejo Bone White. You could also do this with the teeth. I just paid a little bit more care with the teeth here. Then you're going to grab Gorgrunta Fur. This is like an orangey brown contrast paint, very thin down, 10:1. You could even go thinner if you wanted. And you're just going to apply this to all the bone. This is going to help define those edges on these like weird bone growths here. Then he has this little eye on his chest. It's been blacked with Vallejo Monocolor Black. And then I grab Vallejo Escorpina Green or Scorpion Green. And I'm just going to draw a little eye here. You can leave this blank. You can really do whatever you want. But this is what I did. And then within that Escorpina Green, you're going to grab Vallejo Livery Green and draw a slit eye there. And then within that Livery Green, another black eye. It's like a green eye, Eye of Sauron. You can also render it higher, but again, this is army painting we're trying to achieve here, not competition level. And then you're going to grab your AK Streaking Grime or preferred Enamel Wash and apply it over the entire model, trying to avoid the horse. If you get it on there, it's fine, but you want to focus on the armor and weapons and bits like that. This is what it looks like before. It's not completely dry yet. It is drying. It's probably been sitting for about 10 minutes at this point. You want to let it dry a little bit more than that. But then grab some Sansador, mineral spirits, white spirits, whatever it's called in your region, and grab a sponge or a brush. The tool is up to you. They do give slightly different results, and you want to, in a downward motion from the top to bottom, clean it off with a sponge or a brush or a Q-tip, or I don't know, that's what we call them here in America. We call them Q-tips, the swabs. Soak it in mineral spirits, and in a motion starting from the top to bottom, clean off that streaking grime, leaving it in the deepest recesses. Then you're going to grab Winsor & Newton Burnt Sienna. It's So what we're gonna end up doing here is rust streaks. So within these dark chips we did earlier, you're going to apply a dot of burnt sienna. It's kind of an orangey brown color, and then with a small brush, just draw it straight down. And we're gonna end up feathering these out. So if you don't like the way this looks, just give it a moment. The more the merrier, I feel, with these, but you know, with weathering, you probably want to do a couple of these streaks, and then if you don't like it, add a couple, you know, if you want more, add more later. Try to be conservative starting with this weathering. You don't want to let it completely dry, but after it's dried a little bit, you can go back and feather it out with a small dry brush here. Not a dry brush, but a brush that has no mineral spirits or anything on it. If you've never used oils, this is a great way to start. And I'm going to show you exactly why here. So I'm not super happy with how this feathering came out. You'll see me draw down some more. You see the orange got a little too spread out here. But then what you can do is you can clean off that brush, clean brush with just mineral spirits, and clean it up. It's so forgiving. It's very easy to work with. There, look at, just like that, we've managed to fix that streak. It's a little out of focus, but you can see what I mean. It's cleaned up back there on that back part of the horse. All right, so what I've done is I had a little bit extra burnt sienna, so I added a bunch of mineral spirits to it to create a wash consistency, and I just started applying this orange in a couple of recesses. Not every recess, but a couple of recesses where I felt like, you know, where would some rust look nice? I like to do it around the legs and deep armor panels. You don't have to do this everywhere. I just chose a couple areas that I liked, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. This is a completely optional step. I guess painting this whole thing is optional, but this is a step you can skip if you're not enjoying working with oil paints. Yeah, I ended up going maybe a little bit heavier than I realized with these, but you're not applying it everywhere like you did with the streaking grime. You're applying it to recesses, and this is what you should be left with after that. Make sure you let these oils and enamels dry. Leave it overnight, maybe 2 nights, just to be safe. Oil is hydrophobic, so if you end up trying to put any paints over top of this, it can be very annoying because the paint will beat up. And then apply a matte varnish through a can. I think it was Rust-Oleum in that case. Now we're gonna move on to metallics. I start off with his faceplate here. Scale 75 decayed metal. It's kind of a dark brown bronze metal. I'm also going to apply this to his blinders here. I guess they're blinders, kind of weird shape for blinders, but he also has some skull ornaments hanging off of his chainmail and leather there. I paint those bronze as well. Then I move on to that chainmail, speaking of which, with Vallejo metal color steel. Another good candidate would be Vallejo metal color exhaust manifold. It's more of a brown color, but I always use that, so I wanted to change it up a little bit. Highlighting, or layering, I guess in this case, that decayed metal, I use Balthasar gold, which is not gold. It's very weirdly labeled as gold. And what I'm doing here is, it's kind of a layer and highlight combo. I'm leaving the deepest shadows, that decayed metal. As you'll see, I only paint the top of this. I don't even go into the recesses. And for the skulls, just the most prominent areas. I'm not painting the sides. It's, like I said, it's somewhere between a highlight and a layer. You can always go up if you want to. I'm gonna leave it at these 2 layers. You can always go higher if you would like. Then I apply a black wash over all these metallic areas so that the scythe was actually done in Vallejo metal color steel as well. You can see there. Apply a black wash, Nuln oil. I prefer Vallejo, but whatever your preference is. You just want to darken up those recesses over these Vallejo steel areas. Then you're going to apply AIRBRUSH Earth Shade, which is a brown wash over the bronze areas. We're gonna end up doing a little bit of verdigris on those. You're actually gonna apply the AIRBRUSH Earth Shade to both the steel and bronze. Yeah, there we go. Just to give it a little bit more of that dark, decayed look. He is Nurgle aligned after all. What we're gonna end up doing is some verdigris. So over the bronze areas, we're gonna apply Coelia Green Shade, not thinned. Just apply it over the entire area. It's going to darken it down, add a little bit of a green tinge to it. Then after that, we're going to add Citadel Nihilak Oxide. You can apply this over the entire area. Try not to gum up the detail like I have here. I actually end up sucking that back out with a brush. Yeah, don't let it pool in the recesses. Apply it over the entire area of these brass areas. And then you're going to do smaller areas of Gauss Blaster Green. This is like a very pastel green color. Then we're gonna go back with Balthasar Gold. We're gonna do a little bit of dry brushing just to bring back up the areas. Think about areas that would be rubbed up against, so maybe the water wouldn't settle as easily in them. So leave that Gauss Blaster Green and that verdigris in the recesses there. Fix his mask up a little bit. So there's just a hint of verdigris starting. His head's a little loose there, you might see it bopping around. I end up gluing that again later. Then we're gonna apply AK Ultra Matte Varnish on through using a brush to dull down that metal. And the edge of the scythe, we're going to do a not quite dry brush. You're just kind of pulling. It's like a dry brush in one direction on the scythe there with Vallejo metal color steel. And finally for the scythe, we're going to grab some dirty down rust and apply it to the top of that. And that should leave you with this. And here is our first of many Varanguard done. I hope you enjoyed this weathering tutorial. There's a lot of techniques here. Hopefully one of them helps you out. If you're afraid of oils or enamels, I really encourage you to try them on a project like this. They're very easy to work with, but I know they can be intimidating because it's a new thing. But hopefully I've shown you in this video that, you know, even I can do it. It's not super difficult. If you enjoyed this video, we'd appreciate a like, subscribe, share, all that usual stuff. We also stream, as I mentioned. Hope you enjoyed. See you later. Bye-bye.